There is one question capable of completely transforming the way you see your life. It seems simple, yet it carries a depth that very few people truly understand. The question is this: do you already have what you desire? Your first reaction may be to answer immediately: no. If you long for financial abundance, yet your bank account doesn't reflect it. If you desire a loving relationship, yet you still find yourself alone. If you dream of a new career opportunity, but nothing seems to happen. Logic tells you that you do not yet possess what you are searching for. And throughout our lives, this is exactly what we've been taught to believe. We've learned to trust only what our eyes can see. We've learned that reality is limited to what we can touch. That only what has already happened can be considered real. But Neville Goddard spent decades teaching something entirely different. According to him, there is a reality far deeper than the one perceived by our physical senses. And it is this invisible reality that determines everything which, sooner or later, becomes visible. This idea was not simply Neville's personal philosophy. His teachings were largely based on a psychological interpretation of Scripture, where the Bible describes the inner movements of human consciousness rather than merely historical events. To Neville, God is not distant from humanity. The divine presence expresses itself through the human imagination. That is why one of his most famous statements is, "Human imagination is God in action." When we first hear these words, our minds often resist them. Because we were raised to believe that imagination is nothing more than fantasy. Something reserved for children. Something without real power. But pause for a moment and observe your own life. Before any building ever existed, someone imagined it. Before every masterpiece was painted, it first lived in the artist's mind. Before every invention changed the world, it existed as an invisible idea. Every human creation follows the same path. It exists first in the unseen. Only afterward does it appear in the physical world. Neville simply extended this principle much further. He taught that the very same law governing every invention also governs our daily experience. Our identity, our health, our relationships, our prosperity. Everything begins within. And this completely changes the original question. Perhaps the real question isn't, how can I get what I want? Perhaps the better question is, when did I stop believing this was already possible for me? Notice the difference. The first question places all the power in external circumstances. The second returns that power to your own consciousness. Neville insisted that consciousness is not merely an observer of reality. It is its source. Whatever you deeply accept as true about yourself eventually finds a way to express itself in your outer world. Not always immediately. Not always in the way you expect. But inevitably. It is much like planting a seed. When someone plants a tree, they don't dig it up every morning to see whether it has started growing. There is an invisible season. A silent season. From the outside, nothing appears to be happening. Yet beneath the surface, life is already at work. The roots are expanding. The foundation is being established. Only later does the visible tree emerge. Neville used this image to explain why so many people give up on their dreams. They plant a new assumption today. But tomorrow they look once again at their old circumstances. And conclude that nothing has changed. In doing so, they uproot the seed through doubt. They unknowingly return to feeding the very state they hope to leave behind. Imagine someone who desires financial abundance. For a few moments, they genuinely believe a prosperous life is possible. Then, only hours later, an unexpected bill arrives. Immediately they think, I knew nothing would ever work out. According to Neville, that very moment marks the return to the old state of lack. It wasn't the bill that determined their reality. It was the meaning they assigned to the experience. And this is one of Neville Goddard's most revolutionary teachings. Events themselves have no inherent power. They receive their meaning through the consciousness that interprets them. There is a reason why so many people study Neville Goddard's teachings for years and still say that nothing has changed in their lives. It isn't because his ideas are difficult to understand. In fact, they are remarkably simple. The real challenge lies in letting go of an old way of thinking that we've carried since childhood. From an early age, we were taught to believe that events come first, and emotions follow afterward. First, we get the job. Then we feel secure. First, we meet someone who loves us. Then we experience happiness. First, we achieve financial stability. Then we finally feel at peace. The logic of the world seems to follow this sequence. The outer world happens first. The inner world responds afterward. Neville completely reversed that order. He taught that what we call physical reality is actually the effect. The cause exists within consciousness. That means peace does not begin when your problems disappear. It begins the moment you inwardly assume the state of someone who already lives in peace. Prosperity does not begin when more money arrives. It begins when you stop identifying yourself as someone who lives in lack. Love does not begin when another person enters your life. It begins when you leave behind the state of rejection and begin recognizing your own worth. Notice that Neville never taught that repeating positive affirmations alone was enough. He often criticized mechanical repetition when it lacked genuine conviction. What truly transforms your life is what you accept as natural. And here we arrive at one of the most fundamental ideas in all of Neville's teachings. States of consciousness. Neville explained that you are not permanently an anxious person. You are occupying the state of anxiety. You are not a failure. You are occupying the state of failure. You are not destined to live in lack. You are simply identified with a particular state of consciousness. At first, that distinction may seem insignificant. But it changes absolutely everything. Because if it is only a state, then it can also be left behind. Imagine an actor. Today he plays a doctor. Tomorrow he plays a teacher. Next week he portrays a king. None of those characters define who he truly is. They are simply roles he temporarily assumes. According to Neville, we do exactly the same thing throughout our lives. The only difference is that we forget we are playing a role. We spend years saying, "I am anxious. I have bad luck. I always ruin everything. Money never stays with me." Eventually, these statements stop feeling like thoughts. They become identity. And once something becomes part of your identity, you begin acting in ways that unconsciously confirm it. That is why so many people sabotage opportunities without even realizing it. Not because they want to fail, but because success feels unfamiliar to the state they currently occupy. The human mind naturally seeks consistency. If you deeply believe that you do not deserve prosperity, every opportunity may feel uncomfortable. You'll find reasons to postpone. Reasons to quit. Reasons to wait a little longer. Reasons to believe you're still not ready. Meanwhile, someone else, perhaps with fewer qualifications or less experience, moves forward simply because they are living from a different state of consciousness. Neville taught that the secret is not fighting every negative thought one by one. The secret is changing the entire state. Once the state changes, the thoughts begin changing naturally. It's like moving into a different house. Without replacing every single window, the entire view changes. And here, an important question arises. If you could completely forget your personal history for just one day, forget your failures, forget your disappointments, forget every limitation you've been told about yourself, who would you feel yourself to be? This question isn't meant to produce an intellectual answer. It is meant to reveal something much deeper. Neville taught that there is an I am that exists before every story we tell about ourselves. Before you say, "I am poor," there is simply, "I am." Before you say, "I am incapable," There is simply I am. And according to Neville, that I am is the doorway to any state you choose to occupy. It is the foundation upon which every new identity is built, and the starting point for every transformation you will ever experience. There is a question that has followed many people for years. If God knows everything, why did He place this desire within me? Perhaps you've asked yourself that question in silence. Perhaps you've looked at a dream that seemed impossibly far away and wondered, why do I keep longing for this if everything around me suggests it will never happen? Neville Goddard saw this question from a profoundly different perspective. To him, a genuine desire is never born by accident. It doesn't arise simply because you saw someone else achieve something, or because society convinced you that you should want a certain kind of life. There is a difference between a passing wish and a desire that refuses to leave. Some desires disappear after a few days. Others remain with us for years. They return again and again. Even when we try to ignore them. Even after we've given up. Even after we've convinced ourselves that it would be easier to forget them. Neville taught that these persistent desires carry a special meaning. In one of his lectures, he explained that desire is a gift from God, because, in his spiritual understanding, God and human imagination are inseparable. Desire is not meant to torment us, it is an invitation to enter a new state of consciousness. Think about it for a moment. You've never wished you could live as a giraffe. You've never woken up wondering what it would be like to spend your life as a dolphin at the bottom of the ocean. Those possibilities simply do not belong to your consciousness. Yet there is probably one dream that keeps returning. Perhaps it's the desire to build a family. To start your own business. To write a book. To travel the world. To find lasting peace. To regain your health. To experience financial freedom. To finally feel fulfilled. Why that particular desire? According to Neville, because that state already exists within infinite consciousness. Desire is like a window opening toward a possibility that is asking to be assumed. Unfortunately, almost everyone makes the same mistake. They confuse desire with lack. They think, if I desire prosperity, it's because I'm poor. If I desire love, it's because I'm alone. If I desire peace, it's because my life is chaotic. Neville taught exactly the opposite. Desire does not reveal what is missing. It reveals what is calling you. Imagine a traveler gazing at a mountain in the distance. The mountain does not exist because he desires it. It was already there long before he noticed it. His desire simply directed his attention toward it. In the same way, what you desire does not have to be created from nothing. From Neville's perspective, it already exists as an available state of consciousness. Your task is not to manufacture that reality. Your task is to learn how to inhabit it. This completely transforms our relationship with desire. Instead of seeing it as proof of absence, we begin seeing it as an invitation. And the moment we change the meaning of something, we also change our emotional response to it. Notice what usually happens. A desire appears. Almost immediately, doubt follows. How is this ever going to happen? How long will it take? What if I fail? Am I dreaming too big? These questions seem perfectly natural. But Neville taught that they keep us anchored to our old state. Notice that every one of them begins from the same assumption. They all assume that the outer world will determine the future. Meanwhile, consciousness remains subordinate to external circumstances. But what if you reversed that way of thinking? What if, instead of questioning the possibility, you quietly said to yourself, if this desire was placed within me, then I can begin feeling its fulfillment today. Notice that we are not talking about denying difficulties. Neville never suggested ignoring responsibilities or pretending problems do not exist. He proposed something far deeper. Do not allow the problem to define who you are. A person may be experiencing financial hardship. Yet inwardly, they can stop identifying themselves as someone condemned to lack. Another person may be facing illness. Even so, they can begin cultivating the identity of someone moving toward wholeness instead of defining themselves by the condition they are experiencing. This is not about denying present circumstances. It is about refusing to turn them into a permanent identity. There is an enormous difference between saying, "I am going through difficult times," and saying, "I am a person destined for hardship." The first describes a temporary experience. The second creates an identity. Neville taught that it is identity that continually expresses itself. That is why so many people change cities, change careers, change relationships, and still find themselves repeating the same patterns. The scenery changes, but the state of consciousness remains the same. It is like replacing the furniture in a house without strengthening its foundation. The appearance improves for a while, but the structure remains unchanged. Perhaps you know someone who always says, "Nothing ever works out for me." Strangely enough, no matter where they go, new experiences seem to confirm that belief. According to Neville, this is not because the universe is punishing them. It is because they continue occupying the same state. And every state seeks expression. Likewise, when someone genuinely changes their inner identity, unexpected opportunities begin to appear. New ideas emerge. New relationships develop. Old opportunities suddenly take on new meaning. Not because they controlled the outside world, but because they began seeing it through a different state of consciousness. Neville often reminded his audiences that no one can faithfully occupy two opposing states at the same time. You cannot continually nourish the belief that you are incapable while simultaneously experiencing the quiet confidence of someone who has already fulfilled their desire. At some point, a choice must be made. And that choice happens first in the silence of your own mind. So, for the next few moments, I'd like to invite you into a simple exercise. Think about the desire that speaks most deeply to your heart. Now, for just a moment. Stop asking when it will happen. Stop calculating the obstacles. Forget about time. Forget about probability. Ask yourself only this: how would I feel if this were already a natural part of my life? Don't search for the perfect answer. Simply notice the feeling that begins to arise. Because it is precisely that feeling that leads us to one of Neville Goddard's most famous, and perhaps most life-changing, teachings. He called it living in the end. Not waiting for the end. Not wishing for the end. But learning to live inwardly as the person who has already arrived. If you were to study only one of Neville Goddard's teachings for the rest of your life, it would probably be this one. He called it living in the end. At first glance, the phrase may seem confusing. How can someone live at the end of a story that hasn't even happened yet? This is exactly where many people misunderstand Neville's message. Some believe he was teaching people to pretend their problems don't exist. Others think all they have to do is repeat, "I already have it," while inwardly remaining consumed by fear, anxiety, and doubt. But that is not what Neville meant. To understand this principle, we must begin with a very simple question. When you desire something, what are you truly seeking? Perhaps your answer is, "I want a house." But is it really just the house? Or is it the feeling of security you imagine experiencing once you live there? Perhaps you say, "I want a relationship." But is it simply another person you're looking for? Or is it the feeling of being loved, accepted, and valued? Perhaps you say, "I want financial abundance." But is money itself the goal? Or are you actually seeking the freedom, peace of mind, and confidence you believe it will bring? Neville observed that behind every desire lies an emotional state. And that state can be experienced long before the outer circumstance appears. That is precisely what it means to live in the end. It does not mean convincing the world that your desire has already come true. It means convincing yourself, through inner experience, that your desired reality has already become natural. Imagine an actor preparing to portray a deeply confident character. He doesn't walk onto the stage simply memorizing his lines. He learns how that character thinks, how he walks, how he looks at people, how he responds to life's situations. For a time, he inhabits that identity. Neville believed we do something very similar in our own lives, only most of the time, we do it unconsciously. Every single day, we play a role. Some people play the role of someone who is constantly worried. Others play the role of someone who always expects the worst. Some unconsciously perform the role of a victim of circumstances, while others quietly begin living as someone who trusts life itself. The real question has never been whether you're playing a role. The real question is, which role have you accepted as your true identity? This is one of Neville's most important ideas. Because the outer world responds far less to the words we speak than to the state we consistently occupy. Imagine two people walking into the same job interview. They have identical resumes, the same qualifications, the same experience. Yet one of them silently thinks, "I just hope they give me a chance." The other walks in with a quiet confidence. "I have something valuable to offer. If this opportunity belongs to me, it will unfold naturally." Notice that neither person is being arrogant. The difference lies entirely in their inner state. One approaches life from lack. The other approaches it from confidence. According to Neville, this invisible difference influences far more than we realize. Because our actions, our tone of voice, our posture, even our decisions, naturally reflect what we believe ourselves to be. That is why Neville often said, "Feeling is the secret." These words became the title of one of his best-known books, Feeling is the Secret. Many people misunderstand this teaching. They assume Neville was talking about feeling intense emotions all the time. He wasn't. He used the word feeling in a much deeper sense. He wasn't referring to excitement or emotional highs. He was speaking about the quiet feeling of naturalness. Think of something that is already part of your life. Perhaps your own name. You don't have to repeat your name hundreds of times every day in order to believe it. You simply know who you are. That certainty is calm, natural, effortless. Neville taught that manifestation occurs when your desire reaches that same level of naturalness. As long as you're still asking, "Will this ever happen?" there remains a sense of separation between you and your desire. But when your inner state shifts to, "This is simply part of who I am," your consciousness begins reorganizing your entire experience of life. Neville often used a remarkably simple phrase. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Notice his choice of words. He didn't say, "Assume everything will happen exactly as you've imagined." Nor did he say, "Control every detail of the process." In fact, Neville warned that trying to control the process usually comes from doubt. When someone plants a seed, they don't pull on the stem to make it grow faster. They trust the natural process of life. In the same way, once you have inwardly assumed your desired state, your task is no longer figuring out how everything will happen. Your task becomes remaining faithful to the state you have chosen. And this is where one of the greatest challenges begins. Because the outer world does not always change immediately. You may practice imagination today, and tomorrow your circumstances may appear exactly the same. In that moment, which identity will you choose? The old one that says, "See, nothing happened." Or the new one that quietly responds, "My inner experience has already changed, and I don't need to abandon that conviction simply because the outer world hasn't fully reflected it yet." Neville compared this to the echo of a mountain. You speak, but the echo takes a few moments to return. It would be absurd to conclude that your voice never existed simply because you haven't heard the echo yet. Likewise, Neville taught that the physical world is like a reflection that follows a change in consciousness, but not necessarily at the exact same moment. That is why living in the end requires something Neville valued deeply. Persistence. Not persistence born of struggle. Not persistence fueled by anxiety. But a quiet faithfulness to the state you have chosen. It means waking up each morning remembering who you have decided to be. It means facing setbacks without allowing them to define your identity. It means looking at a problem without turning it into a permanent conclusion about yourself. Circumstances are events. States are choices. And repeated choices gradually become a new way of living. Perhaps this is why so many people abandon their dreams too soon. They expect confidence to arrive only after everything changes. Neville proposed the exact opposite. First comes the inner confidence. Then, little by little, the outer world begins reflecting a new state of consciousness. But an important question naturally follows. How do you assume a state so deeply that it becomes completely natural? It was precisely to answer that question that Neville developed one of the best-known practices of his teachings. A practice that is simple, quiet, and, according to him, profoundly powerful. He called it controlled imagination, practiced in the state akin to sleep. The practice now widely known as SATS. Up to this point, we've explored one of the central ideas in Neville Goddard's teachings. Your outer reality follows the state you inwardly assume. But this naturally leads to an important question. How do you consciously change that state? After all, we've all had moments when we tried to think positively. We repeated motivational affirmations. We watched inspiring videos. We felt hopeful for a few hours. Yet by the next day, it seemed as though everything had returned to the way it was before. Neville realized that most people were trying to transform their lives only at the level of conscious thought. But in his view, true transformation begins when a new idea is accepted by the deeper levels of the mind. That is precisely why he began teaching a practice he called SATS, short for state akin to sleep. This is not about falling asleep. Nor is it a form of hypnosis. It is that unique moment when your body becomes deeply relaxed while your awareness remains awake. Perhaps you've experienced it without realizing it. It's the moment you're lying in bed. Your muscles become heavy. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts begin to quiet. You still know who you are. You can still hear the sounds around you. Yet an ever-deepening silence begins to surround your awareness. According to Neville, this is one of the most receptive states of the human mind. Why? Because in this condition, the critical mind gradually loses its influence. Throughout the day, we analyze everything. We question. We compare. We doubt. We calculate possibilities. But as we approach sleep, that inner resistance begins to soften. It is as though a doorway opens between the conscious mind and what Neville referred to as the subconscious. Here, however, we should clarify something very important. Neville did not teach that the subconscious is a separate force existing apart from you. He saw consciousness as a unified whole. The only difference lies in how deeply an idea has been accepted. As long as something remains merely an intellectual desire, it rarely transforms your experience. But when that idea is accepted as real, it begins producing effects. And this is where imagination becomes essential. Unfortunately, many people underestimate imagination. They think of it as mere fantasy. A distraction. An escape from reality. But Neville made a very clear distinction. There is an undisciplined imagination. One that constantly feeds fear, worry, and negative expectations. And there is a deliberate imagination. A conscious imagination. A directed imagination. According to Neville, this is one of the greatest expressions of the creative power within us. Take a moment to observe your own experience. How many times have you imagined a difficult conversation before it ever happened? Perhaps you mentally rehearsed dozens of responses. Anticipated conflict. Felt anxious about something that hadn't even occurred. And when the moment finally arrived, you realized that much of your suffering had been created by your own imagination. Now consider the opposite. If imagination can create fear before an event ever takes place, why couldn't it also cultivate peace before your desired reality appears? That was Neville's reasoning. He taught that we are imagining all the time. The only question is, who is directing the process? Most of the time, old habits make that decision for us. We replay the same worries, the same memories, the same disappointments, the same conversations. Without realizing it, we nourish every day the very state we wish to leave behind. That is why Neville repeatedly emphasized the importance of controlled imagination. Control does not mean forcing perfect mental pictures. It means consciously choosing where your attention will rest. Imagine two people receiving exactly the same news. The first spends hours imagining every possible negative outcome. Loss, failure, embarrassment. Their body responds to those imagined scenes as though they were already happening. The second person also recognizes the challenge, but chooses not to remain mentally trapped in it. Instead, they spend a few quiet moments imagining the situation completely resolved. They imagine relief, resolution, peace. Notice something important. The circumstances haven't changed, but the direction of consciousness has. According to Neville, it is this inner shift that gradually reorganizes the outer experience. At this point, another common question naturally arises. What exactly should I imagine? Neville's answer was surprisingly simple. He said, do not imagine the process. Imagine the result. That single distinction changes everything. Suppose your desire is to find a new job. Instead of imagining interviews, resumes, and phone calls, Neville suggested creating a scene that takes place after your wish has already been fulfilled. For example, imagine a friend shaking your hand and saying, "Congratulations on your new job. I knew you could do it." Or imagine yourself arriving home after your very first day at work, setting your keys on the table, and feeling a deep sense of gratitude. If your desire is a loving relationship, don't imagine meeting the person. Imagine the two of you enjoying a peaceful dinner together, sharing meaningful conversation, or hearing someone say, "You two look so happy together." If your desire is prosperity, don't imagine money arriving. Imagine yourself paying your bills with complete peace of mind, planning a vacation without anxiety, helping someone else with genuine joy, living naturally in the freedom that once seemed so far away. Do you notice the pattern? Neville always guided the imagination toward the state after fulfillment. Because when you mentally experience life after your wish has been realized, your consciousness gradually begins accepting that reality as familiar. And this was one of Neville's most essential teachings. Manifestation occurs when the extraordinary becomes psychologically natural. Not when you're desperately trying to make something happen. Not when you spend every waking hour attempting to convince yourself. But when your desire no longer feels like a distant dream, and instead feels like a natural extension of who you already are. That is why Neville recommended keeping your imagined scene extremely short. Just a few seconds. Simple. Always the same. Repeated gently until it acquires the feeling of reality. Not because repetition possesses some magical power, but because familiarity reshapes identity. The more natural that inner experience becomes, the less resistance you feel toward it. And then something remarkable begins to happen. You stop imagining in order to convince yourself. You begin imagining because it already feels true. That is the moment when the desired state is genuinely being assumed. Yet there is one element Neville considered even more important than the mental image itself. Without it, even the most beautiful visualization loses its creative power. That element is not found in the eyes. It is found in the heart. Neville called it the feeling of reality. By now, you've come to understand that, for Neville Goddard, imagination was never just a mental exercise. It was an experience. And every genuine experience contains one essential element: feeling. Perhaps you've heard many people say that all you have to do is visualize what you desire. But Neville made an important distinction. You can create the most beautiful images in your mind and still transform absolutely nothing. Why? Because the image itself does not change your identity. What changes your identity is the moment that experience begins to feel natural. That is precisely why Neville wrote in Feeling is the Secret that feeling is the secret. Not because feelings possess some magical power, but because they reveal what your consciousness truly accepts as real. Think about a memory from your childhood. Perhaps a birthday celebration, a warm embrace, a family trip. You don't have to make an effort to believe those moments happen. Your entire being recognizes them naturally. They carry a feeling of reality. Now imagine a story that never happened. Even if you can picture certain details, something inside you knows it isn't part of your actual experience. Neville taught that manifestation begins when an imagined scene starts carrying the same feeling of reality as a genuine memory. Not because it has already happened physically, but because your consciousness has accepted it as real. That is why he recommended practicing this exercise every evening, when the body had already entered a deeply relaxed state. Not to ask, not to persuade God, not to fight negative thoughts, but simply to experience, for a few moments, the state of someone whose desire has already been fulfilled. And that is exactly what we're about to do. If you're listening in a quiet place, allow yourself to fully enter this experience. If you're driving or doing something that requires your full attention, simply listen for now and return to this meditation later in a peaceful environment. Now, take a slow, gentle breath. There is no hurry. Breathe in deeply through your nose. And slowly release the air. Once again. As you breathe, allow your shoulders to soften. Relax your jaw. Relax the muscles in your face. Relax your hands. Feel your body becoming more and more comfortable. There is nothing you need to solve in this moment. No decisions have to be made right now. For the next few minutes, give yourself permission to simply be present. Imagine your body resting upon a safe and supportive surface. With every breath, you become lighter, calmer, more peaceful. Allow your mind to slow down. If thoughts arise, don't fight them. Simply watch them drift by like clouds moving across the sky. Then gently return your attention to your breathing. Now bring to your awareness the desire that still lives quietly within your heart. Don't choose something simply because it seems important. Choose the desire that awakens genuine hope whenever you think about it. Perhaps it's a restored relationship. Perhaps it's vibrant health, financial abundance, inner peace, or a new opportunity. Don't try to figure out how it will happen. For the next few moments, the how doesn't matter. Remember Neville's teaching. He believed the unfolding belongs to life itself. Your role is simply to assume the state. Now imagine a very simple scene. A moment that would naturally occur after your desire has already been fulfilled. Don't create an entire movie. Choose one small moment. Perhaps someone is smiling at you and saying, "I knew everything would work out." Perhaps you're sitting at your kitchen table, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Perhaps you're looking out the window, realizing that the burden you've carried for so long has finally disappeared. Perhaps you're embracing someone you love. Or simply breathing with the quiet certainty that everything has found its rightful place. Remain in that scene. Take your time. Notice the details. How is the lighting? What sounds surround you? How are you sitting or standing? Notice your hands, your face, your breathing. Now do something even more important. Instead of merely observing the scene, step inside it. See through your own eyes. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the air against your skin. Hear the words spoken directly to you. Notice your response. Do you feel relief? Gratitude? Peace? Don't try to manufacture intense emotions. Neville never taught that you needed an explosion of happiness. He taught that the true sign is naturalness. The quiet feeling that says, "This is simply my life now." Remain in that experience for a few more moments. Breathe gently. Allow that feeling to fill your awareness. Perhaps your mind quietly whispers, "But this hasn't happened yet." Simply smile inwardly. Without arguing. Without resisting. Silently answer. At this moment, I am learning to live from a new state of consciousness. Nothing more. No struggle. No anxiety. No need to convince anyone. Simply remain. Now imagine the scene gently fading into the distance. Not because it has disappeared, but because it has already been welcomed into your consciousness. You no longer need to chase it. It is already part of you. Take one more deep breath. Notice how your body feels. Perhaps there is a little more calm. Perhaps only a quiet inner stillness. Neville often said that this silence is precious. Because in this silence, we stop reacting to the world for a few moments. And begin responding from consciousness instead. Before we conclude this meditation, silently repeat one simple affirmation. I accept this new state as part of who I am. Once more. Slowly. Peacefully. I accept this new state as part of who I am. Not as an obligation, but as a choice. Take another slow breath. And when you're ready, bring your awareness gently back to this present moment. Perhaps nothing has changed before your eyes. But if something has changed within you, Neville would say that the process has already begun. Because every true transformation is born first in the unseen, and only afterward reveals itself in the visible world. Throughout this journey, you may have noticed that Neville Goddard never centered his teachings on changing the outer world. His true focus was always something else. Changing the one who observes the world. It is a subtle distinction. Yet it completely transforms the way we approach life. Most of us believe that our circumstances define who we are. If we're experiencing financial hardship, we say, "I'm just unlucky." If a relationship ends, we think, "I'm not worthy of being loved." If a project fails, we conclude, "I'm not capable." We rarely realize that there is an enormous difference between living through an experience and allowing that experience to become our identity. Neville insisted that every manifestation begins with an assumed identity. That is why he returned again and again to the biblical expression, "I am." In Neville's interpretation, these two words represent far more than a simple affirmation. They are the starting point of all creation. Notice something fascinating. Whenever you speak about yourself, you begin with these words. I am tired. I am happy. I am poor. I am successful. I am insecure. I am confident. Do you see it? The words that follow, I am, become definitions that your consciousness gradually accepts as true. Many of those definitions were learned during childhood. Perhaps someone told you that you would never be good enough. Perhaps you grew up hearing that money is always difficult to earn. That happiness never lasts. That success requires endless suffering. At first, these were simply opinions from the outside world. But over time, they were repeated, accepted, and without realizing it, they became part of your identity. Neville taught that people are not trapped by the past because the past has power over them. They remain trapped because they continue replaying the same version of themselves within their own minds. It is like watching the same movie every single day. The story feels inevitable. Only because the script has never been rewritten. Imagine a man who spent 20 years repeating to himself, I always fail. Even when new opportunities appear, that silent belief continues shaping every decision he makes. He hesitates. He doubts himself. He postpones action. Every setback becomes proof that his belief must be true. Now imagine that same man slowly begins releasing that old definition. He no longer says, "I am a failure." Instead, he begins cultivating a different awareness. I am someone who learns. Later. I am capable. Eventually. I am worthy of prosperity. Notice that this is not about repeating empty words. Each new affirmation must be accompanied by a willingness to occupy that state. This is where Neville made another important observation. He taught that no one can faithfully occupy two opposing states at the same time. You cannot affirm, "I am abundant," while spending the rest of your day constantly feeding the conviction of lack. Not because you are being punished, but because consciousness naturally expresses what feels most familiar. That is why persistence occupies such an important place in Neville's teachings. Persistence does not mean forcing yourself. It does not mean anxiously monitoring every thought that enters your mind. Persistence simply means returning, again and again, to the state you have chosen. Think of someone learning to play the piano. During the first few days, every movement feels awkward. The hands make mistakes. Coordination hasn't yet developed. But with consistent practice, what once required tremendous effort eventually becomes completely natural. The same principle applies to consciousness. At first, it may feel unfamiliar to think like a prosperous person after years of identifying with lack. It may feel strange to experience yourself as deeply loved after a lifetime marked by rejection. It may seem difficult to remain peaceful while facing life's challenges. But Neville reminded his students that every new identity passes through a period of adjustment. The secret is not giving up simply because it feels unfamiliar. The secret is to remain faithful to the new state. Little by little, what once felt like practice becomes your new way of being. Eventually, something remarkable happens. You no longer need to convince yourself. You simply are. One of the most inspiring aspects of Neville's lectures was his constant invitation to personal responsibility. Not a heavy responsibility. A liberating one. Because if consciousness participates in creating your experience, then you are not condemned to repeat the same patterns forever. There is freedom. There is possibility. There is choice. Perhaps we cannot control every event life brings us. But we can always choose the identity from which we respond. And that choice, repeated day after day, gradually shapes an entirely new experience. Before we bring this journey to a close, I'd like to invite you to do something very simple. Don't answer out loud. Answer only within yourself. When this video ends, who will you choose to be? Not tomorrow. Not when everything improves. Today. Because Neville believed that every manifestation begins in this very moment. The moment someone stops waiting for permission from the world and decides to assume a new state of consciousness. Now allow these affirmations to become more than words. Receive each one as a gentle reminder of the identity you are choosing to cultivate. Take a slow, deep breath and silently repeat each statement. I am more than my circumstances. I am greater than my fears. I am aware of the creative power of my imagination. I am capable of assuming a new state. I am worthy of living in peace. I am worthy of prosperity. I am worthy of giving and receiving love. I am someone who responds to life with confidence. I am persistent, even when my eyes have not yet seen the change. I am faithful to the state I have chosen. I am grateful for the transformation that has already begun within me. I am learning to live from consciousness rather than appearances. And above all, I am. These two simple yet profound words contain the very heart of Neville Goddard's teachings. Because before every desire, Before every manifestation, before every outward change, there is only consciousness. And it is from consciousness that every experience is born. Perhaps when this video ends, the world around you will appear exactly the same. But Neville would say that this is not the most important question. The real question is this: who is looking at the world now? If that person has changed, then your reality has already begun to change as well. Even if your physical eyes need a little more time to recognize it. And perhaps that is the answer to the question that has accompanied us since the very beginning. Do you already have what you desire? According to Neville Goddard, if you have sincerely and naturally assumed the state of the person who is already living that reality, then, in consciousness, the answer is yes. And all that remains is to allow life to reveal, in its own perfect time, what has already been born within you. If this message spoke to your heart and helped you see Neville Goddard's teachings from a new perspective, don't let this reflection end here. Take a moment to like this video. That simple gesture helps this message reach others who are also seeking to transform their consciousness and the way they experience life. If you haven't joined our community yet, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every week, we share meaningful reflections on consciousness, imagination, spiritual growth, and the timeless teachings of great masters who inspire a deeper way of understanding reality. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Leave this comment below. Today, I choose to live from my new state. That sentence is more than just a comment. It is a decision. A quiet commitment to yourself to leave behind your old identity and begin, each day, to embody the person you truly choose to be. And if you believe this message could bring light to someone who is struggling with doubt, fear, or discouragement, please share this video. Sometimes, a single reflection reaches someone at exactly the moment they need hope and a new perspective. Thank you for investing this time in your personal and spiritual growth. May you continue cultivating a consciousness that is increasingly aligned with the life you choose to create. I'll see you in the next video.